Okay, I'm going to call this meeting, the December 7th Bicycle Committee to order. And we've got on the screen with us, we've got Miranda, Andy Potts, Phil Group. Was that me?
I don't think so.
Okay, we'll try it again. So we've got Andy Potts, Miranda Beyer, Phil Groupie, and myself on the screen sharing the videos. I've already called it to order. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from October 5th of 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Approved, motion by Andy, approved by seconded by Miranda. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, Phil, we're good to go.
Right.
Next item number 3, do we have anybody on the Zoom or in the chambers who'd like to make a public appearance for a non-agenda item?
No one is in the chambers.
Hi, Angie.
Hi there. Sorry, I'm late. Technical difficulty.
No problem. We already went ahead and started. We are on. Is that me?
It'd be weird for it to be feedback from your own.
But yeah, it's never happened to me before. So it's if it keeps going, I'll call out and dial in. So we're on agenda item number 4 on the agenda, and we're talking about bicycle related events in and around Fitchburg. So Phil, the floor is yours.
Sure. Go ahead and share my screen real quick. There we go. Didn't have a lot coming up here, not surprisingly, being winter and all, but we did have 2 things that I threw on our in the packet here. One is the Santa Cycle Rampage. They do this in Milwaukee and Madison. I don't know if this is an annual thing, but it's the first I've heard of it. Just dug it up a couple weeks ago. Starting at the university's library mall on State Street. It's just kind of a ride around for a couple hours and doing a winter clothing collection to donate to local elementary schools. So if you've got a bike that's appropriate for whatever the weather is going to be like that day and bundle up, seems like it could be a fun time. And then I guess we have missed by now already, so I went ahead and threw this on the packet so you were able to see it if you checked out the packet ahead of time. But this last weekend was Global Fat Bike Day. So if you have a fat tire bike, congratulations. Hope you were able to get out this weekend and enjoy it. Maybe not really the road conditions to necessitate it, but still. Yeah, that's about it for events. I don't know if anybody else knows of anything coming up in the next month or 2, but that's what I was able to find. I don't think we have anything in Fitchburg coming up.
Any other events folks would like to share? Okay, let's move on to item number B, update on priorities impacting the bike network. Phil and Andrew.
All right.
Andrew's not here.
Yep, Andrew wasn't able to make it this morning.
Okay.
This is also a little bit quicker one. Again, unsurprising. We're into the winter, so there's a little bit less going on. But mostly it's just a continuation of things that we have already been discussing in recent months. The first one is that the fish hatchery road construction is completed, which is exciting. We've got the all lanes, both directions opened again. The multi-use path along the west side is fully opened. Has anybody had a chance to use that yet?
I have used it.
Yeah.
Actually, I used it on the day of the ribbon cutting.
Oh, there we go. Fantastic. I
have used
out
it
of
too.
town, unfortunately.
Yeah, I use it as well.
Nice. Every
Nice.
time I drive up and down there, I look at that bridge and get real excited to actually use it. It's very attractive. Yeah, so that's fish hatch is done after a 2-year process. Throw in the planning and notifications, and it's been even longer than that. So nice to have that completed, both phases of it. South Scion Road, no major updates here, though the one thing is that there's been discussion in the past few months about the treatment for the intersection here at East Sherrill Parkway and Scion. There were a couple different possibilities for that intersection, either just leaving stop signs, doing a roundabout, a signalized intersection, or even Andrew had proposed a protected intersection. Council decided to go with just a standard signalized intersection. So that's what they're going to be throwing up there at East Sherrill. once they go through that South Sain project starting next year. So I don't think there's any big surprise there. I think there had been a little bit of interest in getting that protected intersection with kind of some separate through lanes for bikes and pedestrians. I don't know if there was anything beyond the cost that was part of council's deliberations, but they elected to not go with that one. I know it would have been more expensive. I don't think tremendously so, but I don't know yeah. So pretty standard treatment there. I don't think anything that'll surprise anybody or make it difficult to get through. At McCoy and County Highway MM, that rework is still scheduled to begin summer of next year. We've received bids on the project, have not yet chosen one, but in the next couple months, Andrew's going to put together a resolution for council to select one of the bids. We've again discussed this project at pretty great length. There's going to be most likely, I believe, a slip lane for northeastbound traffic coming onto South MM. The Capital City Trail that currently kind of comes along the west side of MM and then goes across at Clayton Road is instead going to cross right at McCoy and then come along the opposite side of MM, just so cyclists and anybody using that trail is able to use a signal to get across instead of just waiting for a break in traffic. So that should be a big improvement for safety and just ease of use. There had been plans to include a buffered bike lane on southbound MM and possibly make that kind of existing spur of the Cap City Trail part of some bike infrastructure going south along MM. It sounds like there is a new development in this area here. So I believe they're kind of waiting to see what the developers' plans are, because I think they're also potentially going to be handling upgrading the road. So depending on what goes on with that development, with the developer, there are hopes to expand the bike infrastructure, the bike lanes going along MM, but we'll just have to we'll have to wait and see what goes on with that conversation, and I'll talk with Andrew about when that decision is being made and by whom, and if it's something that the bike committee is able to have some input on.
Phil, a question before you move off this project. At one time, we heard at one of those meetings that the bike trail was going to stretch up through the woods there and not go down Clayton Road. Is that still in play, or I know it's Dane County, but
yeah. So I don't know the status of those talks. So if you're not familiar, what Mark's talking about is right now Cap City Trail really just skirts along the edge of East Clayton. There had been discussion about making this more of a direct throughway. That would be a longer term plan. I'm not sure what the status of those talks is. I can check on that with Andrew. But yeah, I do believe that's county land. I'm not 100% positive. But yeah, that wouldn't be part of this reconstruction. That would be a down the road development. And there had been one other question. I know I got this from a community member that came to City Hall a few weeks ago. I don't remember if it was discussed among bike committee members, but there had been a question about the temporary signal that was put here at this intersection and then was removed. So eventually there are, part of the reconstruction of this intersection is adding a permanent signal. This summer, as part of the Highway 14 overpass reconstruction, there was a temporary signal put in here by the county to kind of help ease traffic through all the rerouting with that construction. So because that was a separate project done by the county, that signal was not part of our ultimate redevelopment. So that's why that signal was there for a few months and then disappeared. And then we are going to put one back again when we do the full intersection redesign, but that was never intended to be left there permanently. And then just kind of as per usual, a little overview of some of the other upcoming projects. Some of it is, all of this, I believe, is repeat from previous meetings, with the one exception that Andrew said that they're starting to evaluate potential 1 to 3 year projects for infrastructure gaps. So as we get into CIP budget discussions for 2022, that's probably going to be something that as the bike committee, it would be good to talk about maybe what is seen as a higher priority for closing bike infrastructure gaps or expanding the bike network, where there hasn't been discussion about that. I think what I will probably do is for the February agenda and possibly also April, maybe have kind of a multi-stage discussion about this, is ask everyone to kind of review the 2017 bike and pedestrian plan, and also the bike related transportation sections of the 2019 comprehensive plan update. I think it would be good in February to hold an initial discussion, and again extend that into April if we need to, about what would be the most useful areas to fill in gaps in our current bike network. I think that it sounds like Andrew's going to be looking for feedback on that, and so I think getting a little bit of time to prepare and kind of coordinate on what to advise to Public Works would be helpful.
I would certainly like to be part of that. I see a lot of gaps out my way that are being ignored.
Bill, I've got a suggestion too. When we did the 2017 plan, the consultant that we used had set up an online map where cyclists, pedestrians could go out and tag spots on the map. So it was like an interactive map, and that's where a lot of the recommendations came from. There's really no reason we need a consultant to do that. We could just do it through Google Maps. So maybe that would be a suggestion to say, could we have just a Google map of the city and advertise it for cyclists to go out and say, here's where I think there's a gap as well.
Interesting. Yeah, that is something I'll check with a couple people on that. Might want to do kind of a SWOT analysis on that.
Sure. I'll see if I can find the link to it. There's a similar one on the Madison area bike group. It's primarily used for people to identify like construction projects and where there's temporary problems. It actually came out a few years ago during all of the flooding, so people could say, hey, this bike path's underwater, you can't go there. And it's
so kind of a community alert message board sort of a thing in some way. Okay.
The same technology could be used just to, you could drop a pin down and say, there's a gap between this street and this street that I find difficult to navigate. Yeah,
I'd be interested in seeing that.
Bill, I think all these points are well taken, and I think it's important that we get a list from Andy that says, you've got it here in verbiage, but put it in a bullet so one can get a sense of what's happening, then put it on this map that Andy's talking about, and then we can see where those issues are. Because I think, again, we had part of last year where things got out of the box before we were talked to. And I just want us to be certain that we get a early handle on it versus a later handle.
Yeah, and this is something that Andrew approached me to ask about, as well as getting bike committee input on these things. I think that one of the difficulties in past years, and it's a little bit easier this year with 6 meetings instead of 4, but still the timing of our meetings doesn't necessarily always align with the timeline for making decisions on these infrastructure projects, and so it can be tough to make sure that we're having those full conversations before they've got to make decisions. I think that this is the right move, is trying to get ahead of it and say, here are the places that we know need to be improved, and make sure that there's I think Andrew has a pretty good sense of where the gaps are, but getting a little bit clearer, proactive communication from the bike committee about that would only help more.
I certainly, for one, would be more than happy to have a I don't know, maybe we can't technically just have him send a couple emails out if it's between meetings and say, hey, can you guys weigh in on whatever it might be? I don't know that we have the ability to do that within the structure of the committee. Because
I think that might be considered more akin to an official bike committee action, and that would have to be done publicly.
Right, that's kind of what
I think you're right.
So Phil, before you move on, I need to back us up. Steve Arnold has asked to talk about items A and B. So Steve, the floor
Oh,
is yours.
thanks.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I was having a trouble getting the Zoom link.
Hey, Steve. No worries.
Yeah. Just with respect to the Santa Rampage in Madison area, there will be go to the Madison Bikes calendar. There are feeder rides leading to Library Mall from, I believe, 6 locations around the area, including starting at in Fitchburg, and I'm blanking on where precisely we are starting, but that ride goes up to Cap City. Hop House, I believe. We'll go up the Badger and the Southwest Path to Library Mall. And there's also the South Ride starts, the long version of the South Ride starts at Delta Beer Lab in the northeast portion of what will soon be the city of Fitchburg. That is a benefit for the Bike Fed. And so it's a costume ride. I think they had 700 riders in Milwaukee last weekend. It's crazy.
Here we go. Thanks for that tip, Steve. So here's, if you go to the way I found this was I went to madisonbikes.org, and on their calendar, they've got the Santa Rampage here with a lot of the details on the clothing drive and what they recommend for the ride. There's also a link to the Facebook, or a URL for the Facebook page here, as well as the map they put together on Ride with GPS. So that's what I'm pulling up here, and this shows the various routes available.
They're looking for a small registration fee, which just would benefit the Bike Fed. They'll be putting it into Madison projects. There are 2 Bike Fed staffers now working the Madison area. They ran helped with the bike rodeos that we put on. They helped, they ran the bicycle parking at the football games, Badger football games. They're working around the county. Safe routes to schools is another one of their things. I had some comments on projects affecting the bike network.
Sure.
The Bike Fitchburg took an official position of supporting the protected intersection at East Sherrill and South Sayin. Unfortunately, the council, we were not aware of this. Council had already voted to go with the conventional intersection. I talked to Kim Lobdell at the Fish Hatchery opening about it, pointed out that it would have been the 3rd protected bicycle intersection in the country if it were built today, along with one in Utah and one in California. Was wondering if she had, she felt like her firm had the internal expertise to take on a project with that high a profile. The other 2 were designed by Tool Design, which has an office in Madison. And she said to me, she's the one that told me that the council had already voted. I don't know whether the roundabout or the stop signs got picked at 9 Bark and Central Park Place, Phil. Do you know?
I don't.
Or did the council
know
not
off the
take
top of my
action?
head. I haven't heard whether they made a final decision on that yet.
Yeah, Blake Fitchburg is supporting the mini roundabout for safety and traffic calming and speed reduction reasons. Anyway, back to the protected. She said that she thought that there were opportunities, better opportunities around the city for protected intersections. And so we should continue to push for that. That will be a real feather in our cap if we can get a protected intersection anywhere in Fitchburg. On the slide that you just had up, the future projects, I was just going to point out that I brought this up at the time that McKee Road was chip sealed, where they have to repaint the stripes. Now they're getting ready to repaint it again. McKee Road has very wide lanes and just generally all through traffic. And so restriping McKee Road would be the opportunity to make it into a protected bike lane by narrowing the motor vehicle lanes by 1 foot from 12 to 11, and by putting in a 2-foot buffer. And I think that that would be something that the bicycle committee should request, even though it might be denied. I think would be a very worthy project. That's a very important bike route connecting our commercial and population centers. That catches up to where you are in the agenda, I think.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that's one I would say would be. I'll check with Andrew and see if we would still be fine to have that as part of our discussion in February. I don't think they'll make a decision before then. But particularly here between Seminole Highway and Fish Hatchery Road, McKee is going to be undergoing some restriping. And so, yeah, kind of discussing whether to, we have just kind of a standard shoulder bike lane here on each side, whether we would narrow the lanes and add some protection for that bike lane is definitely something that is already on the radar as a possibility. But thanks for
one more thing on that, Phil. One of the concerns there is that the lack of a multi-use path on the north side of McKee Road through much of its length. There's a sidewalk on the south, but that would not be safe for bicyclists. The fact that there is no multi-use path there on the north side is another reason to support the buffered bike lanes.
Yeah, I haven't checked out the Strava heat map that Andy shared with us a few months ago in a little bit, but my recollection is that the traffic on McKee was quite a bit lower than, say, on Schumann Road, east-west, kind of going towards McKee Farms Park. I suspect that's probably a pretty major reason why that this is the only bike lane here. So that would, yeah, if there's a way to add a little bit more user-friendly bike infrastructure there, that would be great. All right, thanks. I think we're caught up then, Mark.
Let me unmute. I was trying to coughing on you. So now we're into the Seminole Highway update, Andrew or Phil. I'm sorry.
Yep, and I believe that's another one
that.
No, we're up to Seminole, and that's
Okay.
another one that Steve had registered to speak on. I don't have anything to share here.
Well, I'll bring one up that's kind of tied to this. Is that Andy had asked a couple of weeks ago about these stop the flashing light signs. Do we talk about that under here?
Yeah, so that's what this is, and yeah, I'll give a quick overview, and then Steve, you would register to speak on this, so we'll give you a minute or two there. This should be a pretty quick one. Andrew came to the bike committee in both, I want to say, July and September. Maybe it was April and July, talking about these RFBs. So because of the addition of that Badger State Trail bridge over McKee Road, we had some flashing beacons at McKee and the Badger State Trail that weren't needed anymore. So Andrew was evaluating, or the Public Works Department was evaluating where those beacons should be placed instead. And the top candidates, based on just their traffic counts, were along Seminole Highway. Capital City Trail was the one spot on Seminole that they had a high enough count that they felt merited it. The tough thing there is Cannonball was closed for a bit for construction of the bike roundabout, and so they weren't able to get a full count of traffic there, but the sense is that would probably also be a strong candidate. What we have right now is enough beacons and posts to signalize one of those two crossings, and so I think the Cap City Trail would be the priority between the two. But I think it's also, there's potentially going to be room in the budget next year, the equipment budget from Public Works, to purchase enough extra lights and posts that we could put beacons at both the Cap City Trail and the Cannonball crossing. So that's kind of where things are at right now. Andrew submitted the idea to council and is waiting their feedback. I think he's expecting that to come back early next year, and then once he's got the go ahead, we'll start working on pushing that forward. Steve, do you want to add anything in?
Yeah, back when the capital city, or when the Badger RRFBs were installed with cooperative county and city grant, at that time, it was stated by the mayor and the county executive that this was a step and that the long-term plan was for an overpass, or at that time, a tunnel was the favored option. But that at that time, it was planned that they would go to the Cannonball and the Cap City trails on Seminole Highway. I do think that Cannonball is a busier route, and much of the traffic when the Cannonball went in was drained off of the Cap City between the Capital City connector and the roundabout, because so many people use that route for transportation. And so if you're not looking for hill work, it's a much flatter way to get to the same place. The amount of equipment that we have is enough for both intersections except for 2 RRFBs. We have enough posts, trombones, posts to hold the signals, the buttons rather, but we need 8 RRFBs and we only have 6. So I think for the small incremental cost, the bicycle committee should definitely recommend that both be done simultaneously, and that the 2 additional RRFBs on the core in the area of hundreds of dollars should be spent to do both intersections. That's all, unless there are questions.
Okay,
Oh, you're muted, Mark.
Mark, you're
still
muted.
but I'll just take the opportunity then to quick jump in.
thank you. Sorry.
So I'd actually asked about this previously. Just I received a contact that forwarded on to Mark and Phil, and then just noticing there was a fair amount of chatter out just kind of in the bike Facebook community as well about these intersections. So I knew that Andrew had been here previously and was just wondering kind of where we were status wise. So good to hear that they're moving forward. Just based on the kind of limited feedback I've seen, it would seem that Cannonball is the preferred option. If we were to only do one, Cannonball would probably be preferred in the bike community, but I agree with Steve. It seems like a pretty marginal cost to just do both intersections, and they both have quite a bit of traffic. I would say I think Cannonball does probably have a little bit more, especially probably younger, just because of the hills. I think when I'm out riding, I typically see more kids on Cannonball versus Cap City, but I think they're both very worthy of having the lights put in.
Phil, I would agree with what both Andy and Steve have said, and I would like you to go back, as the committee, would like you to go back and ask Andrew if this can be done. Because again, that's what I had heard before, was that we had almost everything to do too. And if they're gonna be down there installing, it makes sense just to go ahead and do the second one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it should be a fairly easy push to convince them of that. I think that technically they do have enough posts right now to signalize both of those, but I think Andrew is hoping to get both the vertical posts for beacons and also kind of the long arms over the road at both sites. I'm not sure that we have enough long arms right now, and he'd kind of like to do that a little bit more thorough, signalizing the big discussion between the Cannonball or the Cap City if we were to do just one. And again, the goal is to get both of them with beacons. But if you had to choose just one, the difficulty is that Cannonball probably ultimately has more traffic, but we weren't able to capture the data this year to prove that out. And also the Cap City Trail crosses Seminole right on a curve. And so it might be a little bit more important to let incoming drivers know. I know different people cross at different times. They've had different experiences. When I cross at the Cannonball, I feel like I have much better luck with cars seeing me and slowing down for me. And the Cap City Trail is a little bit more of a crapshoot. And so those are kind of the considerations that they're looking at. But yes, the goal is to get everything. And I think it's just Andrew's checking to make sure that he'll be able to fit that into the budget. I don't suspect it'll be a problem, but it hasn't yet been approved. And so we've got to kind of, can't confirm yet that it's going to happen, but I'm hopeful. Steve?
Yeah, those long arms are called trombones.
Those are the trombones. Okay.
You only need one of them to go over a 2-lane road. So that's why we have enough, because we had 4 lanes at McKee Road. And wanted to just point out that the labor is the only thing that you have to do is you have to pour the bases for the posts. There's no conduit required because they're solar powered and wireless. The other thing I would point out is sometimes it's nice to have a stretch goal so that the council can say, okay, well, we're doing part way this. The stretch goal should be to revise the crossing of the Cap City so it has a safety island like the Cannonball does. So that would require widening the road and putting a concrete island in that's at least 6 feet wide. So that should be put out there as our long-term goal. And that will make getting 2 more RFBs and signalizing both intersections seem really cheap.
Okay, Phil, if you'll pass that feedback along to Andrew, but I think minimally we start about getting both signals up if we can, as soon as we can. Second of all, Joe wanted to speak in chambers, so go ahead, Joe.
Are you talking?
Hi, Joe. I had a note from Andrew that you wanted to speak, so.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to see if I'm connected to the system.
You're there. We see you.
I don't see me
Okay.
though. Okay.
All right, let's move along, Phil. Bicycling grant opportunities, please.
All right. Threw a note in the agenda packet, a memo in the agenda packet about this. I don't think I need to share it up on the screen. I spoke a couple times this summer about available grants for bike infrastructure improvements, and just wanted to give an update on those, as well as information about a third that I've been notified of. This summer, I applied for a Dane County Park and Ride grant program for Fitchburg to help with the construction of a bike playground at the planned North Fish Hatchery hub. We have not yet been formally approved. They had quite a few more grants than they had available budget for. So with this year's funding, they approved several other more immediate projects and kind of put us on the back burner. But the communication I received was that they're planning to ask for additional funding next year for this Park and Ride grant program, and they're just kind of hanging on to our application. They hope to fund us. It sounds like, unless for some reason they're not able to get the budget they requested, it seems like we're going to get the grant that we requested this year in 2022 as we get into the design and initial construction of that project. So we're not yet approved, but that one looks really promising. That would be pretty significant. It would fund about 50% of what we're estimating is the cost of that bike playground. I also applied for the same project, a grant from People for Bikes. You may be familiar with Places for Bikes, puts out some reviews every year of cities' bikeability, similar to the Bike League's bike-friendly communities, but a little bit less well-known, a little bit less of a kind of formalized rating system. But associated with that is also the People for Bikes website and nonprofit. They have a community grant program that funds up to $10,000 of a project as long as it's less than 50%. They did not. So you submit an initial idea for your application, and then they'll select a group of people to submit a full application and then make their decision. For the bike playground, they did not ask us to submit a full application. So that's typically a biennial. Biannual. It's typically a twice a year grant program. There haven't been dates announced next year for the People for Bikes grant, but it's certainly something that I'll continue to keep as an option for submitting for funding in the future. Odds are, well, they advise that if you're not selected to submit an application for something, it's probably not going to get funded. So I wouldn't try that again with the bike playground in the future, but certainly other projects that we would pursue, I'd consider submitting for that grant again. The third one is in at the end of January of next year is the deadline for the Wisconsin DOT's Transportation Alternatives Program. That's a little bit broader. So there's a lot of bike infrastructure projects that could be that we could apply for the Transportation Alternatives Program. They also fund environmental remediation, pedestrian improvement following standard road infrastructure improvements. So it's a much broader grant program to kind of help either create alternative transportation infrastructure or kind of clean up and improve infrastructure that's already there, with a minimum project cost recommended. So if we're looking at infrastructure, then the project should cost at least $300,000 total. If it's non-infrastructure, $50,000. So that could be, I believe they also fund like education efforts, design and planning. So that's one that there are several good candidates, I believe, for the TAP grant program next year. And I'll be speaking with our city administrator, Chad, about that. I'll talk with Andrew about it. I don't think the bike playground would cost $300,000, and we've already got half of that funded, so I wouldn't apply for that one. But certainly there are some other things that we're looking at, among them the bike share program that we've talked about, that if we're gonna move forward with a pilot on that, I think that could be a good candidate for us to try to apply for some grant funding from the Wisconsin DOT. So that's where we are with funding right now for bike stuff.
Bill, I like to ask a request. Can you forward that letter that came from Angela Kinderman about that grant? Because one of the things about this is Waukesha last year got $400K for their bike sharing network.
Wauwatosa, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Wauwatosa, my fault.
Yeah. And they were already participating. I think they already had a small network with Bubbler. Does that sound right? I think that was what Angela said. Okay. So this was more of a complete, a fuller expansion of their bike network with, I don't know if they stuck with Bubbler or went to B-Cycle.
Right.
But yeah, there is definitely, there's precedent for them funding bike share programs.
So I think it's important we get on this, and we'll help our own network. So anyway, if you want to pass that back to them, or I can, either one, I think it'd be a good idea, because we got to hustle on this. It's the end of January. I looked at it. It's got to be filled out by the city as I look at it, but I think it's something we can go for, and we should try. All they can do is tell us no.
Yep. And I looked at, I didn't look in detail yet. I scanned Wauwatosa's application that Angela forwarded over to us, and it looks, I mean, certainly they're looking for a thorough explanation of the project, its purpose, how it's going to make a difference in the community, but I think it's very doable in the amount of time we've got available.
And Trek has offered to help fill this thing out, because they helped the folks to our east. So thank you for this. I think it's a great idea. I'm going to keep the meeting going, kind of move us along.
Mark,
There's nothing else about bicycling grant. Yes, Andy.
Two things. One, I'll be seeing some of the TAP people tomorrow, so if you have any immediate questions, forward them on to me. I can try to get quick answers.
Sure.
But two, previously I know Angela had applied for a GEM grant, a joint effort marketing grant from the Department of Tourism for biking, and had not been successful in getting that. But I'm wondering if at some point in the future, is that something that we should reconnect with Angela just to see why they weren't funded, and that would be a possibility. It doesn't really help us with infrastructure, but just kind of on that bike tourism and bikeability, kind of promoting the culture, it would be a good fit.
Yeah. I'm talking to her tomorrow, Andy. I'll ask her.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Phil, go ahead.
No, I was just, that's a great one. I didn't know about that grant. That would be really helpful for some of the things we've talked about. I'd be curious to hear why, if she was told why it wasn't successful, and certainly help us strategize how to apply going forward.
My understanding was she just picked a bad cycle, and there were kind of similar to with Dane County, there were more applications than they had funding available. Not that we didn't score well, just not well enough.
Okay. Well, I'll be
Can I
happy to
speak
follow
briefly?
up for the committee. Yes, Steve?
Yeah, on the GEM grant, Bike Fed did get one for promoting statewide over $70,000. So they might be somebody you could consult with over at the Milwaukee office of the Bike Fed as to what they're doing to for that 70,000 plus. On TAP, it's been the Bike Fed's work to, and the Bike League nationally, to increase the amount of TAP money available. And the infrastructure bill has dramatically increased TAP. I think it's more than doubled. So that funding is there. And for TAP, we should be thinking big, things like side path along the McKee Road, like connecting the Oregon Rotary Trail to the Badger State Trail. These are the kinds of money that can build bridges over highways and can buy real estate that's needed for trail connections. So statewide, we're looking for TAP money for things like connecting the Glacial Drumlin Trail to the Madison Bikeway system. So think big for this, and we'll need not only Phil, but also the entire Public Works Department pitching in and really getting behind whatever idea we put forward.
Okay. All right, let's move along. Bike share update is the next item on the agenda. Phil?
Yep. Again, another one that we've discussed in the past. Just kind of wanted to give a quick update, Mark. I think you can probably add some context as well. We have continued speaking with B-Cycle and the Bike Fitchburg and the Chamber about a bike share pilot in Fitchburg. So this is something that we have discussed at previous meetings. B-Cycle is really excited about extending their network here into Fitchburg. They've already got a pretty healthy section of Madison covered. They have a one or two docks in Monona now, and Fitchburg is a pretty logical extension as well, given the proximity to both of those cities. So we had a call with a couple representatives from B-Cycle last month, I believe, maybe October, about kind of their vision for a B-Cycle expansion into Fitchburg. And I think that it seems like it would largely follow kind of the initial plan that I worked on with Wade and showed to the bike committee maybe this spring, last winter, where we'd kind of look at putting stations around Fitchburg in a couple phases. So sort of starting with more of the central corridor of Fitchburg, down Fish Hatchery, possibly over McKee to like the race day events, Delta, Oak Bank area, a dock over there, getting down into the Civic Campus or Promega, and then possibly over to Swan Creek, kind of trying to get that central couple corridors of Fitchburg covered. This is something that B-Cycle is excited about. They're being pretty active now about courting not just the city of Fitchburg, but also the chamber, and speaking with a couple of local businesses that have expressed interest in having access to bike share for their employees or for their customers. So this definitely has some momentum. It seems like it's moving forward, and as long as we can get the funding figured out, it looks like there's a very strong possibility that we're going to have a bike share pilot in Fitchburg within, I would say, a year and a half. I'm not sure exactly once the decision's made how quickly they'll be able to move forward with this. But yeah, this is moving relatively quickly now.
I wouldn't add anything different other than we're going to be giving this presentation that Phil referenced to CETA tomorrow. Mike Zimmerman has put $50K in his budget this year out of sports. It's coming out of the sports contingent, and the budget's already been passed by the council, as Steve said earlier. So we got a green light there. The chamber's going to throw something in. And in addition, there have been meetings set up. They've already met with 4 or 5 people in the city people like myself on the chamber board have been making introductions to business people throughout the city to get people going. They have had people call them about wanting this. So once we get the infrastructure, there's the capital costs, then there's the ongoing cost, and Trek is getting all the sponsorships once we get past the city. So he's right, they're very active. I'm a little more optimistic we'll get this done the second quarter of 2022. They need to have, by I think early January, a commitment to get everything ordered and put in place by March of 22 when they go out. That's when they put the bikes back out. I don't know if we'll be there yet, but certainly I know of 4 more calls this week. So I'm optimistic. We can share with you the presentation that they're giving to CETA tomorrow, because I know Phil's invited to that meeting as well. So questions about it?
One clarification, CETA's on Thursday, not tomorrow.
Sorry, I'm talking to the chair. I remember I didn't get home till late last night. Okay, Phil, let's keep moving along. Data collection.
Data collection, yep. Had one more memo in here. I don't know if there's anything that needs to be shared on the screen. Yeah, sure, why not? So last we spoke in October, we had funding freed up in our 2021 budget to make an initial purchase of some trail counters so we can actually finally start getting a little bit more precise count of our bicycle community's participation, activity along the network. Because of the difference in costs and the amount of money we had available, we decided to go with purchasing 7 TrafX counters rather than doing any eco counter purchases for right now. We were able to get 7 of these TrafX counters for probably the cost of 1 or 2 eco counters, and they're just a little bit easier to install and maintain. So sorry, let me think about where I was going with this. So we got the 7 counters purchased in October. It's been a little bit of work getting the purchase approved, getting it shipped. It's actually a Canadian company, so it took a little bit of time to get here. And then something as simple as a battery purchase, I made the mistake of going with a vendor that had a couple snafus in their delivery. So we finally have everything put together. I worked with Jordan over in the Parks Department over the last couple of weeks to get these counters put into some metal AC disconnect boxes so that they can be locked and kind of protected from the elements and any possible tampering out on the trails. What I'm showing here is a map of the initial 7 locations where these counters are going to be placed. I'm going to follow up with Jordan later today. His team was supposed to put these boxes out last week. I don't know if they were able to do that or if anything else popped up in their schedule. But at some point this week, we should have these counters up and I'll be able to go out and activate them all, and we'll start collecting data on our trails. It's a little bit later than I'd hoped. I wanted to get some of our more active fall cycling in the counters before the cold weather came in, but unfortunately it just didn't work out that way. But at least for the entirety of 2022 now, we're going to have active counting going on these different locations. I was kind of trying to prioritize some places that I know are a little bit higher volume of cycling, while also getting a little bit more of the kind of edges of people coming into and out of the city along, here with the overpass, maybe getting a little bit more of kind of the local community riding, McKee Farms Park and South Fish Hatch, but then also some of the through traffic with the bike roundabout and East Cap City Trail. So my intention is to have 1 through 5 be fairly permanent locations, and depending on what the data shows, and if it seems like there are other places that before we're able to purchase more counters, maybe we'd like to track a different site like the South Badger State Trail going out of town, or possibly something around the Cannonball Trail here, where maybe we're getting some neighborhood traffic from Traceway and Post Road. 6 and 7, I'm intending will be maybe a little bit more floaters. So we'll give them a few months at these locations and see if we want to adjust those spots. But yeah, we finally have our counters up and start getting that data that's going to push us to gold, give us a better sense of how our network's doing.
Good job. Thanks, Phil. Keep us advised as this goes forward, then please. Moving us along on the agenda, we're now down to the committee reports section. And we've got a goal team update. Do you want me to give that, Phil? You want to give it?
Go for it.
Okay. We had one of the things when I was asked to be chair of this group, one of the things we were dealing with was the silver award that the city got and the joint agreement that everybody wanted to move to gold down the road. So I placed together a small working group out of our committee and our colleagues at Bike Fitchburg, and we began starting this journey. We're a little over a year and a half into it. We got stopped by COVID, as you know, or slowed down, and we have reinitiated this. We had a conference call with Andy, Steve, Arnold, Tony Hartman, myself, Phil, and I'm blanking on, Mike Grady from Bike Fitchburg, about what we need to do to get this moving. And I can safely say we've got things going in the direction I think will allow us sometime, probably later in 2022, to get an application in. We're going to talk to the Bike League as well. Again, they're changing their criteria a little bit, and we haven't heard. One key thing with that criteria change is going to be equity, diversity, and inclusion into the applications, and demonstrating how we're doing that here in the city of Fitchburg. So the only other thing I would add is working on more bike-friendly businesses. And Steve and I are going to try and go offline later this week to put some things together. And first of all, talk to the chamber. We identified in a brainstorming session 6 to 8 businesses that should be bike friendly, but that aren't. And we're going to go from there. So you folks, I mean, just about everybody in the committee's been involved in this one way or another. Would anybody else want to add anything to that quick update? Yeah, Steve.
So late breaking news is that I've been in correspondence with Thad Schumacher, and he's approved joining the Bike League at the minimum corporate level of supporting business for $250 a year. That includes his fee for his BFB application, which I have a draft of. And so we'll be putting that in. Once I've gotten that one taken care of, I'll approach some of the other businesses that I am confident that they could score. And I'll also work on getting Griesmeyer Law moved from Verona to their actual address in Fitchburg. But the deadline for bicycle-friendly business applications next up is March 22nd. So we should be able to get a few in before then.
And I think that's our goal, is that we don't have any, and the one we thought we had in Fitchburg is listed in Verona. So anyway, more to come on this. I think that we had a really good conversation with our group, and I for one want to have a little bit more about diversity, inclusion, and equity with the Bike League, just to get a sense of, are we doing the right thing? I think the hub gives us things. I think as we place bike share around the city, we're dealing with access and inclusion. So, more to come on this. It's a good thing for the city. I was telling some committee members just before I just got back from Hilton Head, and they're an island, and they're a gold bike community. They got signs plastered all over the place. But at any rate, anything else, Phil, you want to add?
I kind of thought after the meeting that we had a couple weeks ago that I should have mentioned this. Of course, the Bike League wants to see more bike-friendly businesses, and we should encourage that. But in terms of business participation with bicycling in Fitchburg, I think it would also be worth really stressing the bicycle benefits program as well. I think being a bike-friendly business is fantastic. It's a great indicator that the business is already putting a lot of effort into expanding kind of their support of cycling for their employees, especially, and for their customers. But bike benefits might be an easier sell to a number of businesses because it's something that they can advertise to try to bring more customers in the door. So I believe it is a less expensive investment. I mean, the bike-friendly business application is like $100 to $500 depending on your business size. So that's not a lot. But I think bike benefits is even a little bit less than that, and it's something you can advertise and try to maybe kind of encourage repeat customers because they appreciate taking advantage of the deals that come along with that sticker. So it may not be as strong a play with the bike league because they want to see expansion of their own network. But if we had an addition of 10 new bike benefits businesses in Fitchburg over the next year, I think that would also really strengthen our application nearly as much, if not equally so.
We being Mark and I are going to be meeting with Angela. Our plan is to propose to Angela a joint city Bike Fitchburg Chamber program that will have three prongs. One of them will be to take care of the bicycle parking deserts and get the substandard bike parking that some of the businesses have upgraded to APBP recommended parking. The second prong is bike benefits, and the third prong is bicycle friendly business. So those things really are synergistic, and they work together. I mean, really, you've got to have bike parking to do either of the other two. So, and Bike Fitchburg is getting ready to renew over the winter season its bicycle parking survey, which we last did in 2018, and sweep through the city and find all the bike parking in new construction.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Phil. So some more to come on this. I promise this group will remain very active over the next couple of months. Next, we have a council update, and do we, since Joe Maldonado's not here, do we have a report on this, Phil?
I don't have anything, no. Just kind of
Okay.
a placeholder. If Joe's got any news for us, I'll try to touch base with him this week.
Okay. Next is your report to the committee, Phil.
I think I've covered pretty much everything already that was in the staff report. The one thing is I'll just kind of throw out a reminder to please review a little bit the 2017 Bike and Ped plan, especially the network recommendation section. I think that's really what we'd be drawing on. You know, it's a large document. If you haven't read through it, I'm not going to say, well, spend your Christmas holiday reading those pages. But certainly the network recommendations section, I think, would be really good to be familiar with what was recommended 4 years ago, where we've made progress, and maybe where we still have some outstanding work to do, and what did we, maybe what has gotten onto our radar in the last couple of years that wasn't included there that we need to make sure that we're stressing with recommendations for improving our network. So the 2017 Bike and Ped plan, and then the 2019 comprehensive plan update, there's a transportation section in there. And I think it would be good to be familiar with what the comprehensive plan mentioned as well, kind of see where there's overlap and maybe where the two diverge from each other. But I'd really like to be able to talk in February about what the committee would like to recommend to Public Works be the priorities in terms of improving our network.
Okay, so again, we all have an assignment. Phil, if you could resend the link to the Bike and Ped plan to the group, I think that'd be
I'll
good.
get both of
get us
those links
going.
sent out.
Yeah, I had already taken a look at this early on and had given the group some information that was my notes. So you can feel free to use those or don't use them. But at any rate, we all have an assignment for February. So anything else from your end, Phil?
No, that's everything.
Okay. And lastly, we have on the agenda, we have a Bike Fitchburg update. Tony was supposed to be joining this meeting on a regular basis. He's not here today. Steve, you didn't register for this, but do you have a brief update you want to give the committee from the last meeting?
I've covered most of it. The other thing that I would mention is that well, I can tell you that the small grants program is being renewed by Just Bikes. We still have $1,500 from last year, and these are equity focused, and they're meant for individuals and neighborhood groups that don't have the infrastructure to apply for big grants. It could be for things like signage or an education program. So that's run by the Just Bikes Coalition, of which Bike Fitchburg is a member, and also we are the financial agent for that program. They're working in the Parks Department and Park staff on the update of the 5-year Parks program. That again raises the issue of the Fitchburg Greenway project, which you guys are aware of. And we're still trying to get that resolution onto the council's plate. Right now, the little work that's required is to get some estimates for signage costs, because it's principally signage that is the value added there. I have no other, and I've already talked about renewing the parking survey.
Yeah, I would add one more. I participate. I attend these meetings, and I think it's helpful to keep our committees in sync, or at least know what's going on. They did elect a vice president, Eric Kimball.
Yep.
So they now have Tony Hartman is still the acting president, but Eric is the vice president. And I think that's a good thing here. I know Eric. I know Eric quite well. So anyway,
Tony's the real president. We took care of that too. We will be coming up for election of officers, and we do have vacancies. We could take some additional board members according to our bylaws. We have to make sure that your committee and ours don't overlap too much, so we don't get into open meetings problems. But if you know people that want to participate, we continue to meet. We're now meeting back at the library in the library meeting room on the 4th Monday evenings from 7 to 8:30 of each month, except we will not be meeting in December. We'll next meet in January.
just an editorial comment about in-person meetings. Talking to working in healthcare 40 years and still not knowing some providers, people are going back to Zoom meetings. This stuff is spreading like crazy right now. And so I know we're still meeting Zoom, and I'm assuming I'm leading this into our closure here, Phil, that our next meeting's in February, and I got a sense we're still going to be Zooming for a while. I know the chamber just moved theirs back to Zoom. We were supposed to meet in person tomorrow, and they moved it back. But at any rate, it is what it is out there, and just everybody needs to be safe. So if there's nothing else on the agenda, our next meeting is Tuesday, February 1st. We've got some homework to do in the meantime. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Potts. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Byer. Any further discussion before we say goodbye?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
joining.
Thanks for the update.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody,
great
everybody
Tuesday.
have a nice holiday, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks so much. You too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.